Welcome to Your Fearless Birth. I'm so happy that you decided to take action and take full advantage of this mini training that I've put together for you. First of all, when you take action towards your dreams and you actually decide, you know what, I'm going to get out of my fear, that's when the magic actually happens. So you can be in planning mode constantly. And I was stuck in this for a very long time where I would be like, I need more information. I need more information. But nothing was actually happening. It wasn't moving me any closer to my dreams. It wasn't moving me any closer to my natural birth. It wasn't moving me any closer to getting out of a really toxic relationship that I could not, like, it was just terrible. It was just terrible. But the thing is, I notice with my clients is that when they're stuck in their fear, that's when they end up giving into interventions with the care providers. They give into the induction, they give into the C-section, they give into the epidural, they give into going to the hospital when they really wanted to have a home birth. They give into the repeat C-section instead of going for a vaginal birth or at least attempting it. A lot of the times, here's the problem is that fear is what really drives us. You think that it's just your dreams that you want that dream, but oh, there's something holding you back, and that something is fear. Even in my book, in the chapter of how to get the birth you want the first time and how to get the birth you want the second time, there is that component. And I actually talk about this as the right mindset. But mindset is such a broad term, and it accompanies envisioning your dream and taking out those limiting beliefs and stories and reframing them. But one of those components is fear. And fear is something that I know like the back of my hand how to get out of it because I've mapped it. So here's the thing, though, is that this mindset training on how to get past fear, in order for it to work, you are going to have to actually take action on it. So do not just sit here and watch it passively. I want you to be taking notes. I want you to be starting to think about what things in your life might have been in these categories of fear. And I want you to start applying it. When you're done, I would love it if you shared with the group. You don't have to share everything. You can share maybe one or two insights. I mean, sometimes we find out, oh, there's actually a lot more fear than I thought. But other times we realize, hey, actually, I feel pretty confident and I'm not afraid anymore because now I understand where that fear was coming from and I got this. I got this in the bag. Jenny's one of those people that she has a little bit of a fear and then she's like, I got this. And I myself have gotten to the point where I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm afraid of this thing. And you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. So facing fear and doing it anyway. There's also two definitions of fear that I like: face everything and run, or face everything and rise. So which one are you going to be? Are you going to face everything and run away in the other direction and go back to having the experience of the medical system controlling your birth and you not getting your dreams? Or are you going to go in the direction of face everything and rise and take the rest of this mindset training seriously, get your notebook ready, write down any insights that you have, and really participate in this little training? Because even though it's not live, even though it's recorded, even though you might have taken this and like it might be even years into the future from when I recorded this video, that doesn't matter because it's not about when you do it. It's about the actions that you're taking towards your dreams. And if you are watching this in the future and you've been following me for a while, I just want to say I'm so happy to have you here. And thank you so much for the support that you have, because future you who has had your empowered birth is now raving to other moms about this. I'll tell you more about that later. But first, let's get into this little mini masterclass. Your fearless birth: how to stop being afraid and plan your birth with power. So the first question I'm going to ask you is, why are we so terrified of birth? What is it about our birth culture and about our medical system and about what we've been taught that keeps us so afraid? Why is it that when I was a little girl, I went from being excited and saying, I'm going to have 6 kids and they're all going to be born at home, to by the time I was 7 years old, being like, I'm never having kids. There's no way. It's too scary. And then going into my teenage years, being like, oh God, no, I'll maybe have one or two, but give me the epidural, give me a C-section, knock me out for the whole thing, and wake me up after a tummy tuck. And then even in my anthropology class in college, I still had this idea that birth was going to be this painful, traumatic thing. And why would anybody choose to labor at home for 3 days when they could just go to the hospital and have a C-section and take the easy way out? I know, I know. I was very, very obnoxious, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And the reason for that was because I wasn't taught. I wasn't taught anything about natural birth. I was told horror stories. I was told about the episiotomy. I was told about the IV. I was told about contractions being painful. And I saw it in all of our media, in the TV shows that I watched, in the movies I watched. It was everywhere. You know the movie Knocked Up with Seth Rogen? Yeah, that was what I was getting for birth education. So the thing is why are we so afraid of birth? Well, why wouldn't we when you're hearing stories like this or questions in the mom groups? Have you asked this, or have you seen this asked in the mom groups? What if I don't go into labor on my own and I have to be induced? What if I don't dilate and I have to have a C-section? What if my pelvis is too small or the baby's too big? What if they don't let me insert thing? Like, what if they don't let me have food or drink? What if they don't let me move around? What if they don't let me go past 40 weeks? What if they don't let me say no to the test? What if they don't let me say no to the vaginal exam? What if they make it seem like I have to have it? Or what if I can't handle the pain? Well, here's the thing. I mean, I've shared my story already, but if you're coming fresh from this training and you missed the welcome video when you joined this group, let me just reintroduce myself. My name is Carly Bonderud, and I'm a childbirth educator and a women's empowerment coach. I've had 10 years of experience since 2014 in helping women get past their fear so that they can plan their dream natural birth and prove that their bodies work. And I'm actually going to share some stories with you of women who have done this that have helped. So I'm also the mother right now, currently in 2024, of 2 high energy kids. They'll probably be a lot older in the future if you're watching this in the future. I'm also the author of Your Empowered Birth. That's this book right behind me here. It is available on Amazon, by the way, and I'll tell you more about that later. But I also write romance novels for fun. That's just a fun little thing about me, is I didn't start out in the birth world. I actually started out with romance novels. In fact, I even had a little following in fan fiction community, and I had another pen name. And if you get to know me a little bit and you happen to be interested in that, we can always talk about that later. But for the purposes of this training, I'm really going to just get right to it, okay? I love the beach, and as soon as the warm weather hits, I take off with the kids. I work virtually, so the other thing about me is I don't take on everyone as a client anymore. That's why this training is free. That's why this group exists. That's why my content is out on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. And that's why I have Your Empowered Birth now, because it's basically like me coaching you without me actually coaching you. So then if you have a copy of Your Empowered Birth in your possession, you can go through the whole system yourself. And if you have 1 or 2 questions, you're like, hey, I did this thing and I'm not quite sure, I can pinpoint that for you rather than actually going through a major coaching session. So not only do I not work with everyone, I'm also incredibly expensive to work with. And I don't run my classes all year round either, because again, I like to take off time during the summer and go to the beach with my kids. And I like to be able to have those holidays. It's very important to me. In fact, why I created my business in the first place was because I did not want to work from home and be working from home the whole time. I wanted to be able to work from the beach, and I wanted to be able to just do 1 or 2 messages and be able to just have things streamlined so I could attend all of my kids' plays and all of their little parent teacher things and be able to take off weeks at a time for spring break and not have to worry that everything was going to fall apart. And I wanted to be able to have that freedom and flexibility. I mean, how many times do we think, I want to have more kids or I want to have a baby or a sibling, but daycare is expensive, or I don't want to put my kids in daycare, or I don't want to leave them with a nanny. I want to be able to have flexibility in my work schedule. I want to be able to attend those special things that the kids do. And I want to be able to be there when they're sick as well, because it's not fun taking off a sick day. And when you've got a little baby, they need a lot of care too. You need to be able to breastfeed. Breastfeeding, I have done it twice with my 2 kids. And let me tell you, that in itself is a full-time job. Like there were days, sometimes weeks, where I was on the couch with my babies. In fact, I have another training just on why breastfeeding is so difficult and what to do to get out of that, to be able to have an empowered breastfeeding journey, because I did it twice. I had some challenges, but I really made it work even as a stay-at-home mom, and I want to be able to give that gift back. But there's just so much that I've got so much to teach you. And the way I do it now is through these little trainings. So take advantage of them when you find them. And I also do some webinars. I do some little mini master classes. I do challenges. I do have group programs available. And I have my Empowered Birth Ambassadors. And I'll talk to you about that at the end. So stay tuned. If you'd like to learn not only how to become an Empowered Birth Ambassador, but there's a lot of perks that come with it, like getting a free copy of my book where I actually write a personalized inscription to you and I teach you my entire empowered birth system, and you're actually able to make money off of this. Okay. So if you do want to work from home, then I'm just telling you that there is a way for you to generate some income and also test the empowered birth system before you have your baby and be able to have that beautiful transformative birth experience for far less than if you were not an empowered birth ambassador. All right. So now that I've teased you on that, let's dive into the rest of the training, shall we? So there's actually 3 really big reasons why you're afraid. I mean, I know that there's like so many fears that you could probably list a long, long list. And I do actually have a system and process for that I talk about inside your empowered birth. But for the general overall theme of it, they fall into these 3 categories. But first, I'm going to tell you what you're going to get by watching this training, because yes, I know it's a little long and I know you've got time constraints, but this is why you really want to dive deep and take the notes, as I mentioned, because you're going to avoid making mistakes and decisions in your birth out of fear. And you're going to feel more confident in planning the natural birth and saying no to the most common interventions that actually will sabotage your birth and make it more painful, traumatic, and often also lead to the unnecessary cesareans. So this is also what I call the natural birth traps. I talk about them inside my book, Your Empowered Birth, but it basically means that it undermines your confidence, it sabotages your birth, and they're so mainstream that most people think that this is just how birth has to go. And I call them a trap because you don't always know you're falling into it until you get there and all of a sudden, whoop, trap door, now you're stuck. Now how are you going to get out? Or it's a roadblock as you're driving along on your path thinking you're off to get your natural birth, and suddenly you hit a detour and you're like, wait a minute, I'm on my way to an induction or a C-section. And this is again what happened to me in my birth, is I fell into so many natural birth traps, and my clients have fallen into these natural birth traps. And if you want to know what they are, all you have to do is go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com, or check out the guide section of my Facebook community. And you'll be able to see what those traps are, because I list them out. I just lay them out for you. They're in a little guide, and you can download that as a PDF so you can reference it and go, oh yeah, that is a trap. Okay, So the other thing you're going to avoid doing is you're going to avoid crumbling under the pressure when your OB or midwife or the labor and delivery nurse tries to scare you into going against your instincts. So for an example of this, think about if your midwife is telling you your baby is too big. Now, you don't actually feel that there's anything wrong, but your midwife is saying your baby is too big and we're going to have to induce you. Or maybe it's the other way around, like it happened to me, and your midwife is saying your baby is too small and we're going to have to induce you because they're not growing properly. But you don't feel that that's right. That doesn't sound right to you. And you're kind of questioning it. But they are trying to scare you about all of the things going wrong. So, do you listen to your intuition and what feels right to you, or are you going to listen to the scare tactics? Another really big one is the high risk label. This is what happened to Jenny quite often, is that they'd say, because you're high risk, we need to induce you. Because you're high risk, you're going to have this complication. Because you're high risk, you're probably not going to get this. And she was like, what is true for me? And then she was able to go confident through her pregnancy. Rebecca's the same. I'm going to share more of that story later in this training. And finally, you're going to learn the 3 common reasons most moms planning a natural birth end up giving up and falling into those traps. And you're going to avoid falling into what I now call the fear traps. Let's start with fear trap number 1, the fear of pain. How many times have you heard in the mom groups, or you yourself are asking, am I going to be able to cope with the pain? Maybe this is your first baby, or maybe you already had a labor, which was you fell into those natural birth traps that I mentioned. You were induced, or you had a C-section, or maybe you didn't even get to experience labor. Maybe they pushed you into the C-section before you could even experience labor. And you're wondering, am I going to be able to actually handle the pain of a natural birth? Because a lot of people will liken this to going into the dentist and having a tooth pulled without having any Novocaine or any other drugs in your system and just like no anesthetic, or undergoing surgery with no anesthetic, or breaking 20 bones in your body at once, which I really, really hate that meme, by the way. I will not share that on any of my content except to point out how wrong it is. Because the truth is, it's not actually that painful. Let me just show you something, okay? So, my empowered birth story. I'm 5'4" and 110 pounds soaking wet. My babies are almost 8 pounds and 21 inches long when they were born. I have a small pelvis. I have low pain tolerance. I hate needles. As I mentioned earlier in the beginning of this, I said that my family was like, you can't have a natural birth. You hate needles. There's no way you're going to be able to handle it. But you know what? With my first baby, I labored for about 48 hours, mostly at home. It wasn't that bad at all. In fact, it wasn't even as bad as my worst period cramps. I went to the hospital and it was like 12 hours into like ready for my baby to be born. Obviously, I didn't know it was only going to be 12 hours, but still, I went to the hospital and there were some things that I've noticed would make birth more painful. And if you want to know that list, go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/freebies. There's a little mini guide that talks about the unnecessarily painful things. I think there's like a list of 22 of them, but if we're in the future, there might be more added. I don't know. I'm recording this right now. It is January 2024. So the thing is that I recognized there were points where it was painful and there were points when it wasn't. One of the things I recognized it was more painful was when I was on my back and I had the fetal monitor strapped to me. And I had to be on that for 20 minutes or so, I thought, because I had had non-stress tests my entire pregnancy. That is a whole other story that I can get into another time. So I had some interventions in my birth by having to have that monitor on me for 20 minutes. And in that time, the contractions were a lot more painful because I was stuck on my back. But at home, when I was on my back, I had shook my leg through those contractions. So I actually slept through half of my labor over the course of the night. And I just quickly wake up, shake my leg through a contraction, and go back to sleep. So I don't actually remember a lot of my labor with my son up until the point where it was about 10 a.m. in the morning and we finally went to the hospital at 11. So the other thing I noticed is that interruptions constantly, like a nurse constantly badgering you and pestering you and saying, but we need to do a blood draw. We need to check your hemoglobin. And I kept saying no and getting more stressed out and tensing up. Yes, those contractions hurt. And the cervix checks, oh, I do not recommend having a cervix check while you're in labor. It hurts. Like it's just the worst thing ever, especially when you have a contraction and they've still got their finger in your cervix. Your cervix doesn't like to be checked. I pretty much only took the gas and air because I was in a cramped little tiny bathtub. Like the bathtub was not as big as a birth pool. I didn't know the difference at the time as a first time mom, but that bathtub, even though it was big, it wasn't big enough for a proper natural water birth. And because of that, I was hunched over and I was just trying to move around, but didn't have a lot of space to move. So that also made it a little bit more painful, but I was managing. I had some back labor as well because I couldn't get into a good position, because I wasn't in the proper buoyancy of the water. I solved that problem with my second, by the way. But because of that, I'm like, I can't focus. And there's a nurse hovering, and I'm in the hospital environment, and I don't want to be here. I don't feel safe. So I took the gas. I took the Entonox gas, and that allowed me to open up. But the thing is that other than that, it really wasn't that painful. I was really surprised by how mild the contractions were compared to what I had experienced in a back spasm, where my back actually had locked up for 3 days, and in having really, really bad, intense period cramps. And just overall, there are so much more painful things than natural birth. When you don't have Pitocin, don't interfere with the process, and don't induce. I'm going to put that one out there, okay? When you have a true natural birth experience without intervention and without interruptions, when it's not sabotaged, then it's less painful. That's why I have my list of unnecessarily painful things in natural birth that you don't actually have to have. The second baby was completely unassisted labor. So I actually had a pre-labor the night before that was kind of stop and start. And the midwife came out and doula came out, but it turned out to be false, or maybe I was in labor. I got to 6 centimeters, but then a cervical check that was horrifically painful shut it all down. The next time I went into labor, which is what I call my actual labor, because actual labor is the progressing labor where the baby comes out and everything else is practice. When you keep that mindset in mind, you're not constantly worrying about failure to progress or that the baby's never going to come out because you've had so many false starts. So with her, though, I barely noticed the pain. In fact, I was so bored with how easy my labor was and wondering if I was even that far along and how much longer it was going to go, because she'd been driving me crazy for weeks, that I intentionally did some things to try to make it more painful just to see how my body would react. So I clenched up on a contraction when I knew it was going to get to the sharp peak to see how painful that could be. And I also kept my mouth like this and breathed only through my nose to see how that would react. And I intentionally did not make noise to see if my body would react. And I noticed that when I didn't follow my instinct to make noise, to move myself around, to open up, to surrender to the experience, that's when it was more painful. So the other thing is that the transition is actually the worst part, and it's the shortest part of labor. This is when the contractions start piling on, one on top of the other, because your cervix is dilating the last few centimeters for your baby to come out. And then after that, the uterus is just pushing the baby down constantly. Before that, the contractions are actually just building up a muscle, but the transition is when things are moving down. So there's a lot of pressure. But even then, it still just felt like pressure to me. It was just like, oh my gosh, there's so much pressure in my butt right now, and I don't want to do this for another 8 hours. And when I realized that, it's like, I don't like this. Suddenly my waters broke, and there was her head. So I'm like, oh, I'm pretty much done. And the ring of fire, also, if you are panting through that, it's not that bad. It's when you're speeding up the process because they keep saying push, 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 instead of following your instincts, that you are more likely to tear or that you are more likely to have any pain during that stage. Otherwise, it's really, really not that bad. Again, I'm going to preface this by saying this is a true natural birth experience, also known as a physiological birth, which a lot of doulas talk about. You can learn more about that inside this book here, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. That has an overview of what physiological birth really looks like. Another favorite of mine for natural birth is Ina May's Guide to Childbirth and Orgasmic Childbirth. These are the ones I would recommend the most. There's also a newer one called Labor Pain. So you can go and check these ones out on Amazon. They're awesome. One of the little known books that I had in my collection when I was having my second baby, when I was planning my home birth, I found this in the library, is this one here, Painless Childbirth, An Empowering Journey Through Pregnancy and Birth, with Dita Tornetta. But you can find this one on Amazon as well. Let's get to the next secret though, because yeah, we've got the pain out of the way. We now know that birth doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be that traumatic experience. But what if you're high risk? What if you do need to have interventions in your birth? What if they're already saying that you're going to have interventions? Well, what then? Well, here is fear trap number 2, fear of something going wrong, especially if it did the last time or you're high risk. And I bring to you Jenny's story. So Jenny, when she came to me way back in 2020, this was after she had had a traumatic induction of labor, which she had read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth, and she understood that birth didn't have to be painful and traumatic. What she didn't know was that because she was being induced, induction was automatically going to completely derail that whole experience. So she's sitting there thinking, I don't understand. They said that birth wasn't supposed to be painful and traumatic. They said it was supposed to work. And now, like, this is not how my experience is going. This is horrible. And she couldn't understand that until she read another book in my collection. This was after she had already had her first baby. And this book is called Why Induction Matters. It's by Rachel Reed, same author as Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. And this goes into what happens when your birth is being induced, so you can understand the difference. There's a difference between a true physiological birth, a natural birth, as I call true natural birth, versus the natural birth in the medical system that has a whole bunch of interventions. So obviously, Jenny ended up with an emergency C-section, and then she developed postpartum preeclampsia. The reason for her first induction was because she had chronic high blood pressure, and her OB had basically just decided, well, we're just going to induce you. And she didn't have any idea that this was coming, except one of our friends who's a doula had told her, yeah, they'll probably induce you, but she didn't know what that meant. She didn't understand what that really was about. She didn't understand the process. And our medical system didn't want to tell her, because if they had, she would have said no, because Jenny is a very, very strong-willed, strong-minded, powerful woman, and nobody tells Jenny what to do. But she had said in her first pregnancy, it was like they had me on a need-to-know basis, and I needed to know nothing. She actually got so fed up with her OB that she switched to a midwife. But again, she didn't know the political aspects of the fact that the midwives in our area were also playing in an OB's playground and they couldn't tell her anything. And she didn't know that either. So there's a whole big thing about that. But back into the story, after her birth, she said she was never again going to have another baby. She was so traumatized by what happened to her. Maybe you've had this experience too, or somebody in your life has said, after what happened to me, there's no way that I would even try to have another one. I'm sad that I won't ever get my home birth, but I can't try again. Or I'm sad that I won't get my VBAC, but I can't face that again. So I'm just going to plan a repeat C-section. Like there's so many stories like this. Or I didn't go into labor the first time, so I'm just going to induce again. Like when you have that fear of something going wrong or not working the way you thought that it was supposed to work, you tend to just take the same path. So Jenny could have easily never had another baby again. Fortunately, she found me. I showed her the truth. I showed her the map. She took one look at everything that I had been teaching. She said, Carly, how do I take your classes? I didn't have any. I was just sharing this information for free. We created our program in 2021 in the springtime, and I taught Jenny everything that I knew on birth. And we brought in her friend Lisa, and we brought in Rebecca as well. These, you'll hear about them quite often. They're also mentioned inside my book, Your Empowered Birth. They're some of the first clients that I worked with on an actual coaching level. Before that, I was just helping my friends. I was helping moms that I'd find in the mom groups. I was just putting this information out for free. But then I actually turned what I did into a coaching practice and a business in 2021. And that's how the Empowered Birth System came to be, is I'd taken all of the knowledge that I'd already accumulated and what I had attempted to do in my own births and what I was teaching my friends. And I'm like, I wonder if I could streamline this and teach it to moms so that they can get their empowered births. And the results have just been mind-blowing, what's happened since then. As I said, Jenny now has her own t-shirt business. In fact, this is one of her t-shirts that she has made for me, and it's available on her shop. So the thing is, though, she went from saying, I'm never again going to have a baby, to supporting me and these moms inside the Empowered Birth Workshop, learning all of the information. And then by our third workshop, she had not only written a complaint letter to the health authority for the way that she'd been treated and not being told all her options, but she was also thinking about maybe having another baby in the future. She's like, you know what? I think I do want to try for one more. I wanted 2 kids. It's not fair that they did this to me, but I'm not going to let them win. And then by our third workshop in September of 2021, she said, I think I'm going to move up my timeline and start trying now. And then by November of 2021, Jenny was pregnant. Now, she had a 15% VBAC success rate, according to all of her risk factors. When she put it in the calculator, she actually put this in and it said what her chances were, but she didn't believe that because VBAC calculators are actually stupid. They don't work. They can't actually predict whether or not you're going to have a VBAC. They're used as another fear tactic to get you to say, oh, I only have this chance. Maybe I just won't try at all. So Jenny had every reason to be told that she had to have another C-section. And she still managed, with the empowered birth method and what I teach and how to get past fear, she was able to stay centered and confident in herself so that even when her care provider was a little scared, she could be like, look, I get your concern. Here's my backup plan in case this thing happens, but I'm still moving forward with my plan. And in the end, Jenny had an unassisted hospital vaginal birth after cesarean. She and her partner and her doula caught the baby. The nurse, on the other hand, had been like, I need to make sure that I get your blood drawn so that I can tell what your blood type is in case you have a C-section, as Jenny was actively pushing a baby out. Jenny did not get a single vaginal exam. She did not get a single blood test done. She got nothing. The nurse didn't even get to find out the baby's heartbeat because she couldn't find the baby's heartbeat. The baby was on the way out. But the nurse, again, was like, I can't call the doctor until I do a vaginal exam. And Jenny's like, you're not touching me. So the nurse then goes away to go and call the doctor, comes back, Jenny's already got the baby out and the placenta's come out. So the thing is that birth works. Okay. If Jenny, someone who had a 15% VBAC success rate and chronic high blood pressure, gestational diabetes, group B strep positive, previous C-section, and previous preeclampsia postpartum, if she could do this, the sky's the limit. What's the worst that can happen if you go towards aiming for a true natural birth? You get maybe 1 or 2 interventions that you yourself intuitively have now decided you need, and you get the empowered birth experience you have. Or maybe you do end up choosing to have a C-section. Maybe something happens and you do choose that, but it's your choice. It's your choice to have the C-section. It's not chosen out of fear. It's not chosen because of lack of options. It's not chosen because somebody's told you you're not allowed. It's not chosen because you're too afraid of what will happen if you go the other way and choose to have a natural birth. You can actually aim for your dream birth, and then you create your backup plans. So here's another story, though, that I just absolutely love because it's one of my favorites. I mean, even though I trained Jenny up the whole time, as I mentioned, we also had Rebecca. And Rebecca ended up having the most incredible birth experience. She was one of my first major case stories. It was my first major coaching client where I'd been coaching one-on-one with her privately. And what she was able to do in those 3 months with me was just incredible. By the second month of working with me, she was already like so confident in herself that we just brought her partner in to get his fears taken care of so that she could move forward and have a home birth. But before I tell you that story, let me just tell you about fear trap number 3. Fear trap number 3 is the fear of the routine medical interventions and the pushback when you decline them, when you say no. Now, I had this fear. I was really afraid. When I was planning my home birth the first time as a first-time mom, part of the reason I was planning a home birth was because I was afraid of the routine medical interventions and the pushback if I declined it. So in order to avoid going into that system and having to fight with the care provider, I was like, screw this. I'm just going to hire a midwife and I'm going to have a home birth. And then I won't have to deal with those medical interventions. I won't have to deal with that pushback. Obviously, I also got tricked because when they started to put the fear of something going wrong on me, that's when I crumbled under the pressure. That's why I said there's 3 different categories of fears. I wasn't as afraid of the pain as I was the medical interventions and something going wrong because I didn't actually realize what was going on. So the fear of the medical interventions was part of the thing for Rebecca as well. Rebecca was afraid that she would have to give in to a lot of medical interventions. She even had them in her birth plan when she went over it with me for her VBAC plan. At first, she's like, I just don't want to have a C-section again. She went through the Empowered Birth Workshop in June of 2021, and she wrote out her birth plan after recognizing that she could get past her fear and after recognizing how birth really works and realizing that she had been tricked. When you have this fear of pushback, you start to agree to interventions that you don't actually need, and then you fall into those natural birth traps. So I was already giving you a hint about this, but Rebecca, her empowered birth story is very similar. She fell into those natural birth traps. She had a traumatic induction that she thought she had to have because she wasn't going into labor on her own, and she was a very young mom of 18 at the time. And unfortunately, the OB took advantage of the fact that Rebecca was young and didn't know what she didn't know and told her that she was going to have an induction, and she went with it, and then she ended up having a C-section. And then the next time she's like, I want to have a VBAC, but again, Rebecca fell into some of the VBAC traps that I've talked about in my content and inside of my guides section. You can find those little lists of things that you want to pay attention to when planning a VBAC so you don't fall into those traps. There's a list of cesarean traps as well. So she fell into that again. because they said something's wrong with the baby both times. And Rebecca, not knowing what she didn't know, fell into that trap of fear. The third time, she's like, I'm not having another C-section. I don't want it. But her care provider tried to say, your body mass index is too high, you're high risk, you're older, you've had 2 C-sections, it's going to be another C-section. And she said no. And she decided to get the information that she needed, like what you're getting in this training, to be able to plan that from a place of power. But even so, when she came to me and asked me to look over her birth plan, I could see that she was still planning things in a way that was going to lead her right to another C-section. And I said to her, Rebecca, do you even want this IV? No, I think I have to have it because what if something goes wrong? I'm like, okay, but if you're agreeing to an intervention because you're afraid that something's going to go wrong, guess what? That intervention is actually going to be what causes something to go wrong. So the medical system has this idea about the safety net. And everything that they do, from the vaginal exams to the continuous fetal monitoring, to saying that you have to go into labor by a certain number of days, to saying that you need to be under a certain age or under a certain weight, or your baby needs to be under a certain weight, or that like any number of those high risk factors or just something going wrong, they have their interventions that are supposed to control that. But every single one of those interventions interferes with the natural birth process, and it makes it more painful and leads to you having a physiological birth derailed and turned into a medicalized birth. And instead of getting the true natural birth experience, if you manage to have a vaginal birth, then it is the natural birth. You know, the difference between true ice cream that is bought from a nice dairy farm where you know it's all organic or ingredients versus going to the convenience store for the highly preservative chemical version of the frozen dessert that masquerades as ice cream. And you know you can't pronounce all of those ingredients. But, you know, it tastes like ice cream, kind of, but it's not the same thing. So true natural birth is organic birth. Natural birth, as it is taught in the medical system, is the preservative laden version of it that maybe it might work, but it might also be really, really bad for you and you just don't realize it. Yeah, I said what I said. That's not to say that if in your course of your physiological birth, you recognize that something needs to change in your plan, that you can't go and get that intervention, because then it is actually medically necessary, because you yourself are like, something's wrong. I'm going to get something of a little bit of help just to get things going. And that is okay because you have chosen it. But just doing the way that the medical system does, is just like the drive-through version of birth, that is how you get the C-section that you didn't actually need. That is how you get the induction that traumatizes you that you didn't actually need. That is how you end up giving into medication that you didn't actually need, but you thought that you weren't coping and you couldn't handle it. That is how that happens. That's how birth trauma happens. But when you're choosing an intervention, you just have to understand one thing. When you choose to interfere with natural birth, you are no longer having a physiological birth, and you need to recognize that any intervention, however small, is going to lead to an outcome you can't exactly predict, as well as your physiological process. And your body might go, whoa, wait a minute, that's not the way we plan to have this go. And you've kind of thrown this off. So labor is going to be longer now, or we're going to have a complication come up, or this birth isn't happening. You're going to have a C-section now because baby is absolutely stuck and the uterus is not doing what it needs to, or the uterus is now hurt. Like uterine rupture rates, a lot of that comes from using Pitocin. and using, or whatever they call it, oxytocin, syntocinon, wherever you're from. But here it's usually referred to as Pitocin in North America. And it's not the same thing as what your body makes. And if you want to know more about how interventions really interfere with your natural birth, again, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage really lays it out for you. So even as you're understanding how physiological birth works, you can start to see how each intervention would screw that up. And another really good classic when it comes to navigating what the risks and benefits are of certain interventions, check out The Thinking Woman's Guide to a Better Birth by Hensi Goer. Obviously, though, Rebecca was not afraid. She was the one that was confidently declining routine tests and vaccines after I told her that she had more options and more rights than she thought she did. Once she realized that she was actually in control, using the empowered birth method that I taught her in talking to her care provider, she had an unassisted home birth with her partner catching their baby. They reclaimed their birth experience with their third child. It was beautiful. So now that you know what the 3 fear traps are, I'm going to tell you the secrets that the medical system and our birth culture don't want you to know. Because the easiest way to keep you in control and doing what they want is to keep you afraid. So you might want a true natural birth, but if you're afraid of talking to your care provider and saying no, or planning a birth that maybe your family and friends aren't used to, like going for a natural birth or even a home birth when everybody in your family had the epidural, or choosing to have an unassisted birth, or choosing a midwife when everybody else picks an OB, whatever it is, that's the fears that you have started to recognize are coming up for you and where they really are in the categories of those fears. If you can't get out of that fear, you're going to crumble under the pressure when it comes up, because the medical system benefits from you staying afraid, because scared moms are compliant moms. But don't worry, because I know what they're doing and I'm not going to let them trick you. So here's secret number 1. Most decisions that you don't want to make are because you're afraid of what will happen if you do what you actually want to do. And I did the same thing. Rebecca did the same thing. Jenny did the same thing. We didn't go for what we really wanted the first time because we didn't know any better. We didn't know what we didn't know. We were scared out of it. I was scared out of going for my home birth. I could have, if I had been who I am now today with all of the knowledge and resources and having your empowered birth in my possession, if I had been me back then and being able to like say to myself, hey, you don't actually have to do this thing, and here's the entire system. If I had known that, I would have had my baby at home. I would have told everybody, peace out. I don't care that you're scared. I don't care that you think that something's going to go wrong. Nothing's going to go wrong. I could have this baby at home. In fact, after my son was born and I realized how easy my labor was, and I realized that he was almost 8 pounds, definitely not tiny, I realized like I didn't have to go through the trauma of being in this hospital and fighting. I could have had a home birth if I'd only known what I know now. And Jenny too. If Jenny had known ahead of time that the medical system was going to do what the medical system did, she might have questioned the induction. She might have been like, you know what? I'm going to wait on this, or maybe I'm going to plan a different route towards this, or maybe it's, I now know I have chronic high blood pressure and I'm going to do everything in my power, like she did with her second pregnancy, to make sure that that doesn't become a problem. And with Rebecca too, realizing she was afraid of having a VBAC, and she's like, I have to go to the hospital. And she was really wanting that home birth, but she was too afraid to voice that. She was too afraid to voice that because of the judgment of a lot of the community and moms around the mainstream mom groups, when you say you want to have a home birth with a VBAC, HVAC is like, ooh, scary, but not really, because the default exit for your baby is through your vagina. And the default thing is that if you don't do surgery, you will go into labor. So once she recognized that, she realized, I don't actually want to do this thing, and I'm not going to do it because now I'm out of my fear. Now, secret number 2, other people can and will project their own fears onto you, but it's your job to either tune in or tune out. So yes, the medical system loves to scare moms. In fact, Ina May Gaskin has a quote, "It's easy to scare women. It's even profitable to scare women, but it's not nice. So let's stop it." And the thing is that yes, all of your life, you have been indoctrinated into a system and in a culture and society that fears birth, mistrusts birth, and tries to control birth. Now, it's up to you whether you keep believing that or whether you tune in and say, you know what, none of that feels true for me. And I think that I am actually built to birth and my body can do it. And I don't care about any of these risk factors. I'm just going to do it and do your thing. And secret number 3, that most fears are based on a lack of information, cultural biases, and the illusion of danger and punishment. So this basically shows up like, if you think that you're not going to dilate and you don't have the information to understand that dilation is not a linear process and that dilation can reverse itself and that it's not the be all and end all of progress in your labor, then that lack of information, which I call the right education, screws up your ability to have natural birth. That's why I talk so much about the natural birth traps. That's why I list the most common misconceptions. That's why I talk about cesarean traps and induction traps and really want you to understand what not to put in your natural birth plan, because there's a lack of true information and there's an oversaturation of medicalized information about birth that keeps leading you into those natural birth traps. And the moms that typically teach natural birth, like, I don't have anything against them. I love them to pieces. But a lot of them, they come from it and they're like, birth is awesome, birth is easy. And they didn't experience it in the hospital. They didn't see the political parts of it, or they got lucky in that system and they happen to be able to have a really empowering experience. So they think that that's the way it is everywhere. But the truth is that's not that way for most people. For most people, they've got care providers, OBs and midwives who are pushing fear tactics on them. Or maybe the lack of information is that they think that their OB is supportive, they think their midwife is supportive, but they're also agreeing to medical intervention. So they think that their OB or midwife is the hero and that their birth went wrong, when in truth, it wasn't their bodies that were broken. It was that they trusted somebody who didn't trust birth. And finally, then there's the illusion of danger. What if I don't listen and something catastrophic happens to my baby or to me? Like the risk of stillbirth or the risk of having a big baby or the risk of a C-section, uterine rupture. Like if I don't do this thing, I'm going to automatically get this. And that's what I call could, might, possibly, maybe happen. But the risks are actually a lot smaller than most people realize. And when you understand that, you're like, wait a minute. You're basing it on this tiny number. That's why I had that trauma. Then you get good and mad about that. And this book, again, Why Induction Matters. If you had an induction or you're being pushed into an induction or you think that you're going to get pushed into an induction, this book breaks down the numbers when it comes to induction. And it breaks down the numbers of the actual risks. Because when you ask, well, what are the risk factors? And then you actually dig deep into the numbers, you find some very surprising data that suddenly it's like the numbers don't add up here. Something else is going on. And then finally, there's also the fear of punishment, because there are those people in the medical system right now that you don't want to hire them. They can and will abuse you if you are not strong in your advocacy and you don't know how to spot them. But again, what I teach inside of Your Empowered Birth and in all of my programs and all of my free trainings and everything else inside of this group, you can always ask the question. And you can even say, this is the scenario that I'm dealing with my care provider. Are they gaslighting me? It's just like going through an abusive relationship. When you finally put that information out there for other people who have been there or understand it and really understand it and see it, and there's a difference between, hey, my husband did this and this, is that normal? And you're in a group of people that are like, oh yeah, that's totally normal, because they've normalized that. There's so much emphasis on the abuse that's like holding you down and forcing a procedure on you versus the subtle chips away at your self-esteem. And as someone who has got pretty much almost a degree in dealing with a narcissist and started to recognize near the end just where that gaslighting was, I can see this with care providers and I can be like, they said what to you? Yeah, I know that sounds like that would be reasonable, but here's the thing of what they're actually saying. And I talk about this in my content too. So you can always go and check out my Facebook, my YouTube, my Instagram. And like, I just want this information out there because we have also been taught to be compliant. We've been taught to fear punishment, but they can't actually punish you. This is your body. Are they seriously going to punish you for birthing your baby? If they are, first of all, good luck. Good luck. Because you can have an accidental home birth. Birth is a physiological process. I've got all the loopholes. I can help you with that. So if you ever have any questions, just reach out to me or reach out to somebody in the group. Somebody here who has gone through the empowered birth method will help you and support you. So now that you understand about how to get past fear, what would be possible for you if you could have your natural birth free of fear and anxiety and overwhelm? You make all the decisions on what you will and won't allow. You feel completely confident to say no to anything that you don't want. So that's what the empowered birth system really does. And I'm going to actually teach you that as well in this training, because I want you to have the basics down before you try to do anything else. This system goes deep, but even just having this basic overall frame will help you immensely in planning and getting your natural birth, whether you're currently pregnant, planning to get pregnant in the future, or you've already had one traumatic birth and you want to have better next time. So what you do is you create your dream birth and you can have it any way you want. The moms in the empowered birth community typically are wanting to have that natural birth experience as natural as possible. Maybe they were tricked out of it the first time, or maybe they were lucky and they came to me before they even got pregnant or early enough in their pregnancy that I could help them turn things around so that they didn't have that traumatic experience. But a lot of moms have already gone through the trauma and the pain and made those mistakes, and they came to me and they were hurt. They were basically shattered in how they felt about themselves, about their births, about their babies, about their body, about like, why did no one warn me? Jenny was one of those moms that came to me and I've helped her. And I've also helped moms who maybe didn't get to have the natural birth, but still felt more empowered in their experience because every single intervention that they chose, like, it's like, you know what? I might have made this mistake, but I understand now where that mistake was. It's not my fault. My body's not broken. It was the medical system that did this. So they put the blame where it actually needs to be and not on themselves. So then they can go on and be like, you know what? I think I'm going to try again. And I'm not going to be afraid to try again. And even if I have to plan another C-section, at least it's going to be from a place of empowerment. And I'm going to know what I really want to bring in. So you really can have your dream birth any way you want to have it. While we do aim for the true natural birth and only pull back as needed, there are moms that have chosen empowered cesareans, and you can have that experience. You can plan an empowered induction with this method. It doesn't just have to be natural birth. Though, as I said, natural birth is my passion. It is something I absolutely love. Jenny, on the other hand, also understands about hospital birth and planning a birth with complications and having those backup plans. Like that is her dharma. And then there's Lisa, who had another C-section, but she has information on how to recover from a C-section and bounce back after not getting the birth experience that she really wanted, and being able to recognize where she was able to actually reclaim her power, because she did. She did reclaim her power. There was a few things that she had been denied in her first labor, where she wanted to have a turkey sandwich. She just wanted a turkey sandwich and they wouldn't let her eat. So you know what she did in her final labor? She had her turkey sandwich. She enjoyed her turkey sandwich. She was so happy that she did that. And she got to experience labor, and she got to almost get to the point where she would have been pushing her baby out. There's just some things that happened in her family that they kind of pushed her into the hospital. But other than that, she was able to recover postpartum, bounce back, feel stronger than ever. And now she's doing incredible things, both inside the community and out on her own with her partner and her children. So again, the empowered birth system is so powerful that it can work for you, because it's literally creating your dreams from scratch. You just have the audacity to go for it. And it creates the structure and the roadmap that you need to really create that dream. And it also gives you that confidence, because as moms and as women, we've often been told, oh, aim lower, don't get your hopes up, aim lower. And I'm telling you, aim for the frickin' stars, aim for the moon, aim for the galaxies. You can have anything you want. And the empowered birth system is just one of the most powerful ways that I've seen this transform my life, lives of my clients, the lives of the women that I've worked with that in a lower level, and just anybody that I've taught this system to has found ways of transforming their life with it. Even guys, there's some men out there that I've taught this system to, some male friends of mine, my brothers, and they have done wonders with this system. So if you want to know more about this empowered birth system and get a copy of my book, Your Empowered Birth, you can go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/book. That will teach you more about what's in the book. It will tell you about the case stories of Jenny and Rebecca. It will tell you a short video about the book as well. Or you can just go on to Amazon, on your local Amazon, and just type in Your Empowered Birth and my name, Carly Bonderud. There it is right there on the screen for you. And you'll be able to get a copy of Your Empowered Birth. But here's the thing. If you want to be an empowered birth ambassador for the empowered birth system, and you want me to give you a copy of Your Empowered Birth, where all you have to do is pay for shipping, you would be able to have a signed copy. Not just signed, but inscribed, because I'll get to know you as my ambassador. When you're invited into the Empowered Mom Ambassador program, you will actually have that personalized inscription from me. Because this isn't just a book for you. This is a book so that you can really understand the full empowered birth system. You'll be able to teach it to other moms. Because I can't reach everyone. I want empowered birth to be the revolutionary way for you to plan and get the birth of your dreams. Nobody deserves to have trauma in their birth. Birth trauma sucks. It takes away your ability to feel confident in your body, in your ability to birth. It affects breastfeeding. It affects your relationship with your partner. It affects the relationship with your sexuality. In fact, I recognized a little while back that part of my trauma from my birth had affected how I was able to show up in my sexuality and in my full expression of myself, even though as strong as I was, I still had things that I was holding back. And I'm like, why is it this way? And I realized it all came back from that first traumatic birth experience. So the empowered birth system is healing, it's transformative, it allows you to become your full authentic self. It allows you to start to recognize those traumas both in your birth and outside your birth and be able to say, no, no more. I'm going to create the life of my dreams, because this also inspires your children. How would it be to have your daughters and your sons grow up and be like, you know what? I'm going to create my life any way I want it. And I'm going to go for the job of my dreams, or I'm going to create my own business. I'm going to create my own way, my own wealth, my own legacy. I'm going to raise my kids in a way that feels right to me. No more feeling like you're not good enough. And that's what the empowered birth system really does. So again, you can go and check out that book on Amazon and you can get a copy, or stay tuned after I teach about this empowered birth system, because I'll tell you how to become an empowered birth ambassador. You need to have the right mindset. You need to challenge the attitudes, behavior, and beliefs that do not serve you for the purpose of what you want in your birth. You need to acquire the new information that outweighs those old beliefs and fears and challenges them. You reduce the importance of those negative beliefs, fears, and attitudes. You surround yourself with positive birth imagery and stories. You see yourself as the decision maker, not shared decision making, not deferring to the experts, but I'm in charge. I'm running the show. I know where I'm going in my birth, in my life, in my relationship, what I'm ultimately creating for myself, and everybody else is going to follow this or fall away. You also believe that your dream is possible, even when everyone around you tells you that you can't do it. There's a secret from my mentor, Annie Lala, and she's one of my best friends as well. And she says that if you have a dream in your heart, that dream was given to you and it's in there for safekeeping. And maybe that dream or idea is something that you're incubating to share with the world, or maybe it's just for you to move towards your dreams. But that dream came to you for a reason. So if you have a dream of having a natural birth and everybody around you says you can't, but your dream is like, no, I'm meant to do this. Stop listening to what other people tell you and use that right mindset. And there's actually questions that you can ask yourself, journal prompts inside of your empowered birth to help you get the right mindset. Next, you need the right education. I talked about this when I was telling you about the pain and how, honestly, birth isn't supposed to be that painful. And here's all the things that actually make it painful. And here's all the things that you thought that were just normal that are actually screwing things up. So you need to learn your rights about informed consent and refusal as well. Can you say no to these interventions? Yes, you can. You need to learn about all your options in birth, not just the menu options of your care provider, your family, your friends, and social media that say what's possible. A lot of moms make this mistake when waiting to the last minute to write their birth plans. They're like, I want to know what all my options are. The empowered birth method, you create your options first by creating your dream, and then you go out and seek the information. So you learn about true birth physiology outside the hospital setting. Because as I said, the hospital birth setting doesn't work. And I actually have more trainings on how that actually can be spotted in the natural birth traps. And stay tuned, because I will let you know in the group when these trainings become available. As I said, I don't always teach the classes. Sometimes these are just recorded, and sometimes I actually do teach live. But as I said, I like to be able to spend a lot of time with my family. And if you're watching this in the future, then you'll already know I have a very full life as it is. And I want to be able to keep that freedom. And I want that because I want you to have the same in your life. I want you to have that freedom. So by understanding that's like, I'm going to show you how to create the most ideal, perfect, awesome life. I mean, not perfect in the sense that nothing ever goes wrong, but perfect in the sense is like, you know what? I love my life. Yeah, things sometimes don't always work out exactly the way I thought, but it's been fascinating. And I just love being here. And I love being able to share this with other people. And I love being around my children. And I love being around my partner. And I just can't wait for the next 20, 30 years as I get older and my kids get older and my partner and I get older and we can teach this to the world in our own way and do our own thing. Like, that's what I really want you to be here for. I want you to enjoy your motherhood. Want you to enjoy the time that you have now in your pregnancy. I want you to enjoy that time and be like, you know what, even though this thing is really a struggle right now, I'm excited to find out how to navigate this challenge. So the other thing is you're seeking out birth classes outside mainstream hospital systems. I do have birth classes available. I do have material available. I also know doulas and childbirth educators who teach the kind of content that you really need. So do not hesitate in reaching out and asking what the recommendations might be. But if you're going to do that, don't just say, hey, what birth classes do you recommend? No, say, I am looking for this kind of birth experience and I want this. What can I find from there? And you know what? I can show you more about that inside Your Empowered Birth. And there's other things you can get as well that are also free and or low cost that will help you in planning and getting that birth you want. So the other thing, of course, I've already shown you a whole bunch of books. Read birth books written by midwives, doulas, and independent childbirth educators. Please do not read books just written by nurses and MDs. Okay? Because those ones are usually heavily biased in the medical system. You want the birth books written by midwives, doulas, and independent childbirth educators because we don't follow that model. We follow the model of true instinct and allowing you to plan the birth that you actually want and not feel like you're bad and wrong for doing it. Okay? So that's why Your Empowered Birth exists. I wrote that because it was the book that didn't exist. And I'm like, we need a book that actually shows you how to plan because we have enough books about how birth works. Now we need to know how to navigate the system. And there aren't enough books out there that can do that in a way that really works. So I'm making one. Pillar number 3 is the right environment. The right environment is one where you feel safest to let go of all your inhibitions. You obviously, if you wouldn't have sex there, you probably don't want to birth there either. Okay? If you're not able to have an orgasm, you're not going to be able to birth. If you're not able to surrender to the moment, you're not going to be able to birth. If you hate being watched, choose a setting where you won't be disturbed. You are a mammal, and mammals do not give birth where they feel a threat or perceived or real. If it feels like a tiger is stalking you, your body is not going to birth. The right environment can also be a hospital birth, but that hospital has to be supportive and hands off. Jenny was very selective in choosing her hospital. We knew that there was one hospital in our area that there was just no way. In fact, I would say, go birth in the parking lot before you walk through those doors. Like, there are some hospitals in some areas where I just say, hey, you're actually safer having an unassisted birth at home than going to this one hospital. Do not go to this hospital unless you seriously need to have it. And if you do have any other options, like doing an Airbnb and going to a different hospital or going and booking a hotel near a better hospital, do it. Because otherwise, you don't want to risk it. Trust me. Which leads to the next one, pillar number 4, choosing the right facilitators. So choosing a care provider who supports your birth plan before you hire them. This is why I say you create your birth plan first, and then you also have your backup plans, but you don't share your backup plans with your care provider. You share the first plan. You say to them, very simply, this is what I want. Are you going to support me? If not, so long. I'm not going to stay. Like, you're hiring somebody to give you a service. You're not hiring somebody to run your birth. And the medical system, again, operates on you being scared and afraid and having them go, don't worry your pretty little head over it. It's okay. We'll take care of you. Don't question anything. The doctor knows best. And this is operated in a time when we were literally property. Okay? So these ideas of don't worry your pretty little head about it came from the moment that birth went into the hospital. And they literally would drug up women, and then they would wake up and be like, oh, that wasn't painful. But really, they'd been drugged up on scopolamine and Demerol, and they just didn't remember their labors. And there were a whole bunch of complications with that. Every single episiotomy was cut, and every single baby was pulled out with forceps. And the reason babies were actually slapped after birth was to wake them up because they were so groggy after birth. That was why they did that. So if you see any of those old-timey things where the doctor's slapping the baby, that's why. And the moms were drugged up, so they weren't breastfeeding, and then they ended up putting the babies on formula because they didn't have the golden hour, because mom was out of it, probably for 12 hours or longer after birth. So you need to understand that when you're choosing a care provider, they need to be able to follow your lead. And there's a way to do that too. All midwives aren't created equal. You need to do your homework and interview them, spot the red flags. You need to choose a childbirth educator who teaches the kind of birth you want to have. Many just teach the standard hospital birth with interventions, especially if they're nurses. And as a result, many times you end up with interventions in your birth. There's even online courses that I take one look at, and I'm like, there is no way that I would ever send a client to get this course, because it is just going to push them right through those natural birth traps. Even so-called natural birth courses can have this problem. So before you decide to enroll in a childbirth course, because, I do recommend that you check out one. If you're not going to go with me, go with somebody else, but make sure that that somebody else is actually going to teach the kind of birth you want, because I don't want you to fall into those traps. I don't want to see you with a traumatic birth. I don't want to see that for anyone in this community. And there's no excuse for it because the trainings are right here. So if you don't have the training, if you didn't go and watch this, or you didn't watch anything else, and you didn't take advantage of all the free resources, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. And it hurts my heart. So this is for anybody out there. If you share these resources and say, hey, come into the group, and they don't, I just want to tell you one thing. It's not your fault. Okay. So I'm just going to say that to you as well. Yes, you're probably going to get a lot of people that aren't going to follow this. I'm really thankful that you are not one of them. I'm really thankful that you're here. I'm really thankful that you've come this far and you've watched this far, and you're really curious now what the last pillar is. But first, I'm also going to tell you, you also need to choose your doula based on how you need to be supported, because not every doula is right for every client either. And I'm not right for everyone. There's a reason why I'm so expensive as a coach. It's because the way I operate is different from what most doulas operate. I don't just attend births. Sometimes I don't attend the birth at all. I attend virtually. Sometimes I'm on Zoom. Sometimes I'm just using WhatsApp. But I train moms up before birth so that they can go in. And here's the one thing that you need to know. The only one who can't be thrown out of the birth room is you. So if you are strong in your advocacy game and you recognize, I actually don't want to be here, I actually don't think this is a safe environment, then you can change course. But your partner has their own concerns, your doula has their own concerns, and they might not know what they don't know, or they might not be able to tell you. Even your midwife, your OB might not be able to tell you what's really going on. Even nurses have this problem where they can't say things, but they're like, I saw it happening, but I couldn't say anything because I was afraid. And because I was afraid to say anything and go against the culture, this happened to this mom, but she has no idea just how bad this thing is that happened to her. She's upset, yes, but she doesn't realize just how much better her birth could have gone if I had actually spoken up. I've been on both sides of this. I've been on this as a side of a mom, and I've been on this as a side of a birth worker, hearing the stories of other birth workers. That's why the empowered birth method exists. It's needed. So finally, that leads to the right support, which is the end of the bookends of the system. You need to understand that the people closest to you influence your birth in positive or negative ways. You've now met me. You understand I'm now technically in your circle. I'm here for your support. And the rest of the empowered birth community is here because I wanted to build that right support. Even if I can't get to your question, I have other empowered birth ambassadors that can basically navigate and notice what's going on and answer those questions and be like, hey, I know that thing. You're not crazy. You can do this. And they can cheer you on. Because when you don't have that support, it's really hard to keep going when something starts to fall apart in your plan. So you need to evaluate whether they're supportive of your birth plan or if you have to keep trying to convince them that you can do it. You need to have people who believe you can do it. Anyone who's trying to scare you into accepting something that you don't want, not the right support. And your partner. This is a part that I actually train in my clients. This is a part I love to teach the most, is teaching the partner how to support you in your birth. I love to see the dynamics play out between partners as mom feels more confident and dad feels more confident. And they're just like, oh my gosh, like we have different roles and we have different ways of doing this, but we're actually having a more connected and beautiful relationship. And we've got this. We've got this. I mean, I saw that firsthand with some of my clients, and especially with Rebecca, with her partner, and how he was able to anticipate what she needed. And he was like, oh, she's having a contraction. And now he knows to put his hands on her hips because that's what she wanted. And that was what she responded to. And being able to dance with that, it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful watching him support her. So your partner needs to be on the same page. And they need to recognize that you are the expert in your birth, not them. And you also, I cannot stress this enough, stay out of the mommy shaming groups unless you are going to be an empowered birth ambassador and you're coming in fully resourced and you're calm and you recognize that like what these groups actually are. Don't worry, if you want to be an empowered birth ambassador, I'll train you up so that when those fears come up, when those doubts come up, when those triggers come up, you can work through them. Because what we do in the mommy shaming groups is we find those moms who are like us, who want to have that natural birth and are just being told over and over and over again they can't do it, but they have that dream inside of them. They know they can do it, but they don't have the right support. And you come in as the right support and then bring them into the group as I am the facilitator, and they get that education, they get that mindset through this training, as you just recognized how powerful this is. So they get the right mindset, they get the right education, they have a right environment for learning in. It's not toxic, it's not shamey, it's not run by a nurse or somebody else who doesn't understand natural birth. It's not run by admins that are like, we don't like it when you say anything about doctors not listening, and we're going to censor you and kick you out, because, you know, that has happened to me before. I have been in giant parent groups where I said, you don't have to have that induction. And they said, you're giving medical advice. And they censored me and kicked me out. But the truth is that you should be able to speak freely and say, you don't have to do this. So I'm actually counting on you, if you want to be an empowered mom ambassador, to be able to go in and take those moms aside and say, hey, I'm sorry that you got piled on when you asked that simple question of whether or not you could decline that test, or whether or not that induction was really necessary, or questioning your care provider, or just wanting a natural birth and everybody coming down on you and telling you not to be a hero. I'm sorry that that happened. And you know what? Let me tell you, you can do this. I believe in you. I love and support you in having this beautiful experience. And I want to show you what other people, like what other people have done. I want to show you that you can actually have this dream, and here's how, and here's all the information. And look, most of it is free. So come in and check this out. Let's build this group to be ginormous with moms who are all getting those beautiful birth experiences. And again, as an empowered birth ambassador, you're going to be able to be part of that right support, which in turn up levels your own ability to support your family and your friends and your children and be a pillar of support for them in the community, but also be a role model and inspire your kids to become leaders. Because remember, you are a mom and your kids are going to transcend you, and you want them to be a leader, don't you? You want them to be empowered in their lives. You don't want them to follow the crowd. You want them to be able to stand out. You want them to be able to help others. You want them to be loving and conscious people who are doing better things in the world, making the world a better place. You didn't bring kids into this world to tear the world apart and burn the world down, did you? No, of course not. So you'll be able to inspire them. Because let me just tell you about my two. My two kids are amazing little humans already. At 7 and 10 years old, almost 11 and 8, they are just already leaders in their school. My son is helping the principal, and he takes down the decorations after an event, and he talks to his friends and he shows them things. And he actually brought the 7 habits of highly effective teens to school with him and told his teacher about it. And she was really impressed. And my daughter has the 7 habits of happy kids, which is like the little kid version. And she goes and talks to her teacher about it. And she also talks to her friends about it. So you want your child to be a leader when they get to school, or even if they're doing homeschool, still, there's still going to be opportunities for them as they get older to become a leader. And by doing this yourself, you're setting that expectation. If you want to be an empowered birth and empowered mom ambassador, because I have more than just the birth component, I have so much more. If you're watching this in the future, you probably already know some of the things I've created with the empowered birth system, which I call the 5 pillars of empowerment, by the way. That's the official name. It's the 5 pillars of empowerment. And you can apply this in so many different areas for your life. So if you are watching this in the future, you probably already know about some of my other programs. And if you're still early on in the journey, or you just caught this in 2024, then you already know, like, I've got the Empowered Birth book behind me, but I'm also working on other things as well. And I just wanted to let you know, by being that right support, that's really how we get this out there, so that moms no longer feel like they have to be put into this box, that they're not enough, that they're a bad mom if they want to have more than just the typical 9 to 5, or the typical stay-at-home mom thing, or the typical just do everything for the kids mommy martyr syndrome. We don't do mommy martyr syndrome here. If you are actually struggling, and this is the other thing I'm going to tell you about being an empowered mom ambassador, is that if you say to me, hey, Carly, I can't get a lot of stuff out right now, I'm really struggling, the whole freaking community is going to support you. And I'm going to tell you what I tell Jenny, what I tell Rebecca, what I tell Lisa. I'm like, hey, what's my number one rule? You can't pour from an empty cup. You got to fill your own cup first. So go and take care of yourself. And we're here loving on you and supporting you. And as the community grows, we're going to have even more people that are going to be able to take on that. And you will be incubated and supported as Empowered Birth Ambassador. Okay? So if you want to be the next empowered mom success story, and you have not yet had an empowered birth, part of being empowered birth ambassador, empowered mom ambassador, is you need to go through the system. That's one of the requirements. Every single one of my empowered mom ambassadors has gone through the empowered birth system, or the 5 pillars of empowerment. I've helped them in some way. They've gone through that process, and they've been able to have that transformation. Before the transformation, though, they don't know the system, they don't know it fully works. So there's a lot of fear that comes up. So, first step to becoming an empowered mom success story is I have to ask if this is right for you. Now, personally, I love to have the moms who want to have that completely natural birth, because the ones that want to have the completely natural birth are the ones who are going to fight through all of the challenges. And if something comes up and they end up choosing something else, it's not out of fear. So this is for you to be an empowered mom success story. You need to want to experience a completely natural birth. You don't want to have to fight an uphill battle to at least be given the chance to have it. And I'll teach you how to do that. If you're tired of being told you're not allowed and sick of being treated like you're broken until proven capable, then this is also for you. If you're willing to do the work, because that is a component, you got to be willing to take action. You got to work for it. You got to want to take that power back because it's yours. Nobody has the right to keep it from you. That's your power. It's sitting there. You can take it. You're willing to do that work. You're ready to take action. You're going to work hard for it, but work smart. And it's not going to be like an uphill battle. And I promise that you're not going to feel like, oh, I got to do this thing. No, it's going to be like, oh, yeah, I'm taking action on this. I'm taking action on this. I'm moving towards my dreams. I got this. I've got this handled. Maybe I've got a little challenge, but I've got this. Like, you need to be willing to keep going. You can't fail if you don't give up. Now, if you do want to go through the empowered birth system, then you also need to be under 35 weeks gestation. The reason for that is because you need to be able to hire the right care provider. It's really tricky to do that at the end of your pregnancy. Usually with my empowered birth success stories, for moms that come in at 35 weeks, that's a one-to-one coaching. And as I said, I don't work with everyone and I don't have time always to sit and work with everyone. I have had moms that have come to me at 35 weeks and I've worked one-to-one with them and I've turned that birth around and I've gotten them that amazing birth experience that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. Either their partner wasn't supportive, their care provider was like, we're going to give you a C-section if you come in. And I've turned that around. Or maybe it's the wrong hospital. Maybe they wanted a home birth, but they were too scared, but I helped them plan the home birth. Whatever it is, at 35 weeks, that is it's just too much to do. So if you want to go through the system, it's again, you're basically self-learning with my help, my support, but it's self-study. Okay, I just want to be very clear about that. It's self-study, and you're going to want to give yourself enough time. So ideally, the first trimester or 25 weeks is where you want to start the empowered birth system. Anything after that, it's going to be crunch time to try to get it all turned around. If you are not even pregnant yet, even better, because then you can do the interview process with your care providers without having that stress of being like, I'm pregnant, like, and I'm going to be having my baby in 3 months. So it's crunch time to try to find a care provider. When you are still planning to conceive, you have more time to create your birth plan roadmap, your birth vision. You have more time to get past your fears. You have more time to get your partner on board. You have more time to start recognizing, okay, where are the care providers that I might want to start interviewing when I get pregnant? And you'll be able to also interview doulas. Finally, the very last requirement of becoming an empowered birth ambassador is that you want to inspire other moms to go for their dream birth by sharing your own journey. As you saw from Rebecca and Jenny, and for myself, we want to share those stories with as many people as humanly possible, because so often it's the opposite. So often there's the trauma, there's the fear, there's this is how the birth went wrong. And we want to be able to counterbalance that with the positive birth stories. So by going through the empowered birth system and doing the self-study and taking that time to become the empowered mom yourself, then you can go out there with more confidence, knowing that the system actually works. knowing your own story and being able to share that with other moms that you interact with and people in your journey as you say, hey, birth doesn't have to be this way. It can actually be this way. Birth doesn't have to look that way. You don't have to have your life falling apart. You don't have to have that struggle in your life as a mom. You don't have to be the mommy martyr. You don't have to fit in that box. Here is how you get out of it, and here is how you go to your dreams. So, by going through the empowered birth system, you not only get your dream birth, you also get the roadmap and tools to learn how to create that beautiful empowered life. Again, you can always ask questions in the group. We will support you, but you are basically saying, yes, I want to be an inspiration. Yes, I want my story showcased. Yes, I want to be the one that says you can do it. I want to be the one that just is shouting it from the rooftops, because oftentimes we have these beautiful stories and people are like, well, look at you saying that. That must have been nice for you. You must have been lucky. And then you feel like you can't share. Well, in this group, in the empowered birth community, you can shout as loud as you want. You can say, I did this and I rocked this and I went to this care provider appointment. I said this to my OB. I said no thanks to this and I am rocking it. And we are all going to cheer you on and say, yes, yes, you can do it. Oh my gosh, you are rocking it. You are a rock star. You are on fire. Instead of, why would you ever say no to that? So, if you want to know how to become an empowered mom ambassador, and I'm just going to tell you, there are some perks to it. When you're an empowered mom ambassador, what happens is that you automatically get into the empowered birth circle. This is when you get into the group chats with me and with Jenny and with the rest of our empowered mom community of ambassadors, and you can ask the questions directly to us. This also allows you to get more email access to me. You can say, hey, Carly, I have a question about this. And how do I present this information if you're going out there? Because as an empowered birth ambassador, not only are you going through the system and planning your own birth with power instead of fear and making those decisions that are leading you towards your dreams, but I also want to see you out in the other mom groups. And I want to see you taking action and saying to other moms, hey, go check out this group. I want to be able to see this group blow up with more and more moms coming in and getting this education and this training. I want to see you taking action in every area of your life. I want to see you transforming and having your beautiful dream. So, because I want to see you taking action, I give incentives to my empowered birth mamas. One of those is that when I run free live masterclasses and trainings, you will be the first to know about them before I even open them up to the public. This will allow you more time to prepare ahead of time. And if you have any questions or want to workshop something with me or get live free coaching, what you're going to be able to do is be one of those people raising their hands, and I will automatically pick you. Okay? Out of everybody else who raises their hands, you will get first dibs at getting your questions answered, because I want you to get that information. I want you to be my success story. So I will put everything that I can possibly put in front of you to make sure that you have that dream. Not only that, when I create a free resource, I will be putting it inside of the group chat, and I will give you access to that as well. You'll get to test the systems and test the products before they're even available to the public for little cost or no cost at all. Third, if you are an empowered birth ambassador, when I create group programs or trainings, you will get 50% off of the regular admission price for anything that you want to learn on. So any of the future programs as an empowered birth ambassador, because you are technically beta testing with me and you're going to be giving me additional feedback and you're going to be bringing more people into the group, This is going to give you 50% off of anything that you actually decide to purchase. This could be a mini course, this could be a live training, this could be a pre-recorded program. The only thing I don't do 50% off is one-to-one coaching. And that again is because I don't work with everyone. And even at 50% off, it's still a lot. You're also going to get one of my first sets of trainings that I had created back in 2021 and 2022, which is a $297 value on its own. This includes my Get Past Your Fear in 5 Days or Less mini course. This includes how to get your partner on board with your birth plan in 5 days or less. This includes the original Empowered Birth workshop that was about a $97 value, your first 5 steps to an empowered birth. And in addition to that, you're also going to get an ebook from me of how to hire your care provider. And of course, anything else that I create, all of my guides and resources, you're going to have access to that as well. Because as an empowered birth ambassador, I want you to know the product. If you're going to go out and tell people about the products and services and videos, I want you to have actually watched them. I want you to have actually gone through them. I want you to actually know them. Because even in my own life, when I am promoting something for somebody else, I go through the trainings first before I'm going to go out and promote it. In fact, I've got a community for virtual coach and future coach with Evan Pagan. He's one of my mentors and dear friends, and his wife, Annie Lala, and they have their programs. I've gone through the whole thing. So I know that it's so much easier to promote something when you actually believe in it versus here is this thing. And if I give you this thing to sell other people, but you don't actually know what this thing is, and you don't know what it does for people, and you go out and try to sell that thing, it's not authentic. It's just how much money can I get from this person? Finally, that is another thing about being an empowered birth ambassador is that when you sell the products, like if you actually said, hey, Carly, I've got somebody who's interested in this training and I want to give them the thing, then I actually give you 5% of the proceeds of the sale. As an empowered birth and empowered mom ambassador, you are going to be my eyes and ears. So of course, I'm going to reward you with 5% of whatever you sell. And hey, some of my programs might be thousands of dollars, and you're now getting 5% of that. I know it doesn't seem like a lot to start, but there is also opportunities outside of just being an empowered mom ambassador to become an empowered mom mentor, to be able to actually take the trainings and teach the whole system over time, in which case there's even more profit sharing. I basically pay my moms by profit sharing because I feel that that is an easier, more sustainable model than trying to go bankrupt. Because if I'm making all of the money at the top, I want it to also come down to you. And if I'm paying everybody out of pocket instead, and suddenly we don't get any good sales coming in, it doesn't work. So if you're curious about becoming an empowered mom ambassador, all you have to do is email hello@empoweringmomsbirth.com and put in the subject line Empowered Mom Ambassador Program. And I will get back to you, or someone on my team will get back to you. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you were able to recognize where fears are coming from. You now should feel more confident in planning and getting your natural birth experience. You might even have started to recognize that some of these fears that you had are totally off base, and you were planning your birth from a place of fear. And now you're going to go in with more confidence to say no to anything that doesn't align with your birth plan. All right, I'll see you in the group. Thank you so much for watching. Bye now.